In this episode of TSN, we'll tell you whether Trump and Zelensky will meet again. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, watch the broadcast, and be sure to share your thoughts in the comments. While you're giving this episode a thumbs up, here are a few more topics we'll cover. Repatriation, Russian style.
During the most recent repatriations, we were given the bodies of Russian soldiers mixed together with the bodies of Ukrainians. Unfortunately, that's a fact.
Who are the occupiers actually returning under the guise of Ukrainian soldiers' bodies? A destroyed home, Konstantinivka, completely exposed to enemy drones.
And I was alone, all alone. I was afraid to sleep by myself at night.
How civilians, the elderly, and those living alone are being rescued from deadly danger. The European Union is not planning to lower the price cap on Russian oil due to a lack of support at the G7 level. This was reported by European Pravda, citing its own sources. The proposal to reduce the oil price cap from $60 to at least $45 per barrel was planned to be included in the draft of the EU's 18th sanctions package. However, media sources say that on their own, without approval at the G7 level, they will not do this. And in fact, European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen promised to raise the issue of gas prices at the summit in Canada. Ukraine has called on Brussels to lower the price of Russian oil as much as possible, down to $30 per barrel. Earlier, U.S. President Donald Trump also spoke about wanting to reduce its price. He emphasized that this is exactly how it will be possible to put an end to Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine. Meanwhile, the Financial Times reports that since the start of the full-scale invasion, the European Union has paid the Kremlin more than 200 billion euros for fuel. Now, however, the bloc is working on completely stopping the import of fossil fuels from Russia, and also aims to sever ties with the Kremlin in the field of nuclear energy. However, this is not easy to accomplish, since the EU is still dependent on Russian nuclear technologies. Volodymyr Zelensky will discuss new weapons packages that Ukraine is ready to purchase with Donald Trump. The head of state announced this at a joint press conference with Austrian President Alexander van der Bellen. The politician traveled to Vienna for the first time since the start of the full-scale invasion, together with his wife. There are also plans for a working meeting with Austrian Chancellor Karl Nehammer. The publication Der Standard reports that the country's vice-chancellor, Andreas Babler, wants to propose Austria as the venue for future peace talks between Ukraine and Russia. In fact, at the press conference, Zelensky stated that he would like to cooperate more closely with Vienna on issues such as sanctions, the reconstruction of our country after the fighting, the return of deported Ukrainian children, and justice regarding certain Ukrainian oligarchs who have fled the country. However, the issue of weapons was not discussed at the meeting with van der Bellen, since Austria declares itself a militarily neutral country. Nevertheless, journalists asked Zelensky about American weapons and his upcoming meeting with Trump, since the president of Ukraine is heading to the G7 summit in Canada right after his visit to Austria.
We are counting on the support of Austria, both the state and society, on a sensitive issue for Ukraine regarding former Ukrainian officials and oligarchs who are hiding from Ukrainian justice and are using Europe, and certainly Austria as well, as a safe haven to store their stolen assets. Indeed, one of the issues I will be discussing with President Trump at our meeting concerns the defense package that Ukraine is ready to purchase. And we will be talking this over with him. And I am confident that we will have this opportunity. Well, at the very least, I am counting on it.
So, Trump and Zelensky have indeed scheduled a meeting. Talks will take place in Canada, where world leaders have gathered for the G7 summit. This is the first such gathering during Donald Trump's new presidential term. His trade wars with other countries and attempts to reshape the world order suggest that the summit will not be predictable. It is still unclear whether the participating countries will even be able to issue a joint statement, including on Ukraine. Our correspondent in the United States, Olko Shelenko, has more details.
the picturesque Canadian resort of Kananaskis has become the venue for this year's G7 summit.
Or the leaders of Germany, the United Kingdom, Canada, and Japan. This is their first meeting in this format.
But the real wild card, as expected, will be Donald Trump.
Even during his first presidential term, he repeatedly gave his colleagues unpleasant surprises at group meetings. In his second term, after almost 5 months in the White House, he has already managed to declare trade wars on nearly all partners, and he even called on this year's summit host, Canada, to become the 51st American state.
European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen spoke with Trump by phone on the eve of the summit.
The American tariffs against the EU are set to take effect on July 9th.
Besides the economy, they will also discuss wars, von der Leyen announced.
We discussed the tense geopolitical situation in the Middle East, as well as the need for close coordination regarding the impact on energy markets. We also discussed the situation in Ukraine, the need for a ceasefire, and the importance of maintaining pressure on Russia.
The Israeli military operation against Iran, which began last Friday, became the #1 topic.
While Western leaders are calling for de-escalation, global oil prices have started to rise, which plays into Russia's hands.
After all, one of the summit topics is also lowering the price cap on Russian oil. According to Bloomberg, the EU and the UK support limiting the Kremlin's oil dollar revenues. The United States, on the other hand, is against it.
Obviously, the conflict between Israel and Iran is central, and we will have the opportunity to talk with other leaders about the rapidly changing situation and together make a strong case for the need to de-escalate this conflict in the interests of the region and, of course, the world.
Before flying to Canada, Trump assured that there is a chance for an agreement between Israel and Iran.
But he has said the same thing more than once about the Russian war against Ukraine.
I hope there will be an agreement. I think the time for an agreement has come. We'll see what happens. But sometimes they just need to fight it out. But we'll see what happens. I think there's a strong possibility that an agreement will be reached.
Ukrainian President Zelensky and NATO Secretary General Ruda are set to join the discussions on Tuesday.
Ukraine will insist on strengthening sanctions against Russia. However, given Washington's current stance, this issue is unlikely to see a quick resolution.
Behind the scenes, there are doubts circulating about whether the participating countries will even be able to make a joint statement, especially regarding Ukraine.
Olko Shulenko, Maxim Shinkarenko, TSN 1+1.
Israel and Iran continue to exchange strikes. Since Friday, 370 ballistic missiles have been launched at Israel. Last night, they hit the suburbs of Tel Aviv and Haifa. In 4 days, 24 people have been killed in Israel, and more than 300 have been wounded. Among the dead are 5 Ukrainians, 2 adults, and 3 children. They lived in the city of Bat Yam. Calling Israel an aggressor state, Iran refuses to engage in any negotiations as long as Israel's strikes continue. For its part, Israel says its goal is to destroy Tehran's nuclear program and claims it controls the skies over the western part of Iran. Six people were killed by the Russians in the Donetsk region, and 4 more were wounded. In Bohater, an enemy attack claimed the lives of 3 local residents. In Pokrovsk, 2 people did not survive the shelling. 3 were wounded, and an apartment building was damaged. 1 person was killed in Kostyantynivka. There, the private sector came under fire. Drones and artillery destroyed 7 homes. The Russians attacked the Kherson region with drones, artillery, and multiple rocket launchers. In the morning, a 15-year-old teenager who was wounded by a drone in his own yard remained in the hospital in the regional center. In Bilazurka, a car driver was injured. In Antonivka and Kamyshiny, 8 people were wounded. 3 women were injured in Kupiansk. This is Kharkiv region. First, the city was attacked by aerial bombs, then FPV drones, and after that, the enemy also used grads. And near the village of Studnak, a state emergency service vehicle hit an explosive device. The rescuer was taken to the hospital. A 46-year-old man was wounded in Magdalenivka in the Zaporizhia region. The occupiers sent drones to the village, and in total, there were more than 400 strikes across the region today. During the day, artillery shells destroyed an apartment building in Heliopol. At night and in the middle of the day, the Russians attacked downtown Sumy with drones. Windows were shattered in apartment buildings and a cafe, cars were damaged, and there is destruction in the suburbs as well. Evacuation is currently underway. Out of the 213 settlements in the region, according to the Regional Military Administration, there are already 60 where not a single resident remains. The occupiers have advanced near 2 settlements in the Donetsk region. This was reported by the analytical portal Deep State. Russian forces have partially pushed back the positions of the Ukrainian armed forces in the Novopavlivka direction, specifically near the village of Berlitsk and Inovopol. In its morning report, the General Staff clarified that on this section, the enemy army tried to break through the Ukrainian defenses 32 times. Earlier, the Institute for the Study of War reported that the occupiers want to straighten the front line not only in the Novopavlivka direction, but also in the Kurikov direction, in order to advance deeper into the Dnipropetrovsk region. In total, there were 175 combat engagements on the front line over the past day. The most, that is, 46 battles, took place in the Pokrovsk sector. The enemy also continues to level settlements and the positions of our defenders to the ground. In the past day alone, they launched 11 missiles, dropped 99 guided aerial bombs, and used more than 3,000 kamikaze drones for attacks. Airstrikes hit the border areas of Chernihiv and Sumy regions, as well as the frontline communities of Donetsk, Kherson, and Zaporizhia. In response, the Air Force, missile troops, and artillery of the armed forces of Ukraine struck 22 areas where Russian personnel, weapons, and military equipment were concentrated. Russian drones are reaching farther and farther from the front line in the Donetsk region. Now, swarms of drones already pose a threat to cities that are 20, and in some cases even 30 kilometers from the front line. The Russians are indiscriminately targeting both military and civilians. For example, in Kostyumtynivka, which is almost 10 kilometers from the line of contact, the occupiers are making life impossible for the locals. Yet despite everything, nearly 8,000 civilians still remain there, although more and more people want to leave and get farther away from the war. Evacuation missions are being organized by both volunteers and the police of Kostyumtynivka. Our own Yulia Kirienko was on one of these rescue trips.
We need to save people and get them out.
A former district police officer from Kostyumtynivka is now evacuating civilians from the city caught up in the war. Yevhen and his partner Roman are heading out on another evacuation mission. Even though they're in an armored vehicle, covered with metal mesh to protect against drones and equipped with electronic warfare systems, Yevhen still doesn't slow down, because that's the only way to at least try to escape from the drones that are constantly circling over the city looking for their next victim. The vehicles that got hit are still sitting there, burned out on the road.
They hit everything on them. Both civilian and military vehicles. They don't care about anything.
We're driving onto one of the city's main roads. Outside the window of our armored vehicle, it almost looks like an illusion of normal life. Until 3 p.m., before the curfew starts here, the roads are full of cars, even minibuses are running, and some small shops are still open.
We work and live one day at a time. It's scaring you, it's hard.
Kostyumtynivka is actually very diverse. Amidst the fact that the Russians are destroying everything, burning it down, and constantly killing people here, you can still find some small oases of life. Like, you can even grab a hot dog where the grill runs on a generator, because there's no electricity in the city.
And not far from the store, there's black smoke, a fire from a recent strike.
You can even see it. There was just a strike. It's burning right now.
With the constant buzzing of drone detectors in the police car, we drive into a neighborhood that's closer to Chasiv Yar. Here, it's even clearer that the front line is nearby. And here, in the private sector, the police are already being awaited.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Are you here for me? Did you come for me?
Ms. Risa is almost 80. 2 months ago, she buried her husband, and only after that did she find the courage to evacuate. And this morning, her dog died too, the one she wouldn't have been able to take with her, says her neighbor Volodymyr. He came to see the woman off.
She wrapped herself around that pole as if she sensed it and hanged herself. The body is over there. I threw it into that pit. I came in the morning. And there it was, lying there with flies over it.
Ms. Reese's whole life fit into 3 suitcases. The police officers and neighbors are carrying them into the car.
Of course, I'm crying. Well, you know, it's like they're sending us away for good, and the house will just be here.
Ms. Reese gives them a piece of paper with the evacuation mission's phone number as a last gesture, because Mr. Volodymyr and their neighbor Alla still can't bring themselves to leave Kostiantynivka.
I'm all alone, and I have no one at all anywhere in Ukraine. I just can't make up my mind. 84 years old. If only they just hit us all at once and be done with it.
Ms. Risa has no idea where the police will take her, but staying at home, where the sound of gunfire never stops, has become completely unbearable for her.
I'm scared to be alone. That's all there is to it. I was used to being with my husband. Always with my husband, the 2 of us together. I never made any decisions myself. He always made them himself.
Then came the strokes, and that was it. 8 days later, he was gone. And I was alone, all by myself. I was afraid to sleep alone at night.
In the neighboring town of Dreshtivka, volunteers are waiting for Risa, transferring belongings into a car and planning the route because even on the rear roads of Donetsk region, danger is already lurking.
In 2 months, or even just a month and a half, everything has changed a lot. We used to going just 3 to 5 kilometers. We understood that only by chance could something happen to us, but now even 20 to 25 kilometers out is already dangerous. And there's another danger now. They're sending several drones at once. So, one drone gets close to the vehicle, another one strikes to wound people. And a third or even a fourth drone hovers around, waiting for a medevac to arrive so they can hit the rescuers too.
The volunteers promise that first, they'll take Ms. Risa to Pavlorad to arrange payments for displaced persons, and then they'll find her temporary shelter either in the Kiev region or in Odessa. She is one of just 5 people today who agreed to leave Kostiantynivka. Even though the front line is getting closer to this city, there are still 8,000 civilians remaining there. Yulia Kiriyenko, Volodymyr Parakonstyai, Ola Mostovai, TSN 1+1.
Not just hundreds, but thousands of tons of harmful substances. There was in such quantities, according to the Ministry of Environmental Protection, that harmful compounds entered the air of Kiev and its surroundings. And all of this happened after the Russian shelling at the beginning of June. To be more specific, from the 6th to the 10th, the amount of sulfur, nitrogen, carbon oxides, and other compounds formed from fires caused by drone and missile strikes reached 1,900 tons. The Ministry of Ecology even converted this damage into monetary terms. The damages amounted to more than 5,700,000 hryvnias. Let me remind you, there were so many and such large fire outbreaks that even firefighting helicopters had to be involved in extinguishing them. And today, another 1,245 bodies of the deceased were returned to Ukraine. This was reported by the Coordination Headquarters for the Treatment of Prisoners of War. And this is the final stage of the repatriation measures according to the agreements reached in Istanbul. According to the Russian side, these bodies belong to Ukrainian citizens, including servicemen. In total, under the Istanbul agreements, Ukraine has received 6,057 bodies. Soon, law enforcement officers will conduct the necessary examinations to identify the repatriated individuals. During the latest repatriations, Russia handed over not only the bodies of Ukrainian soldiers to Ukraine, but also those of Russian servicemen, according to the Minister of Internal Affairs. Aya Klemenko calls such actions deliberate. All of this is done to manipulate the information space and create more work for investigators. Klemenko notes that the bodies are returned in an extremely mutilated state, with body parts in different bags and even at different stages of repatriation. Each examination is carried out thoroughly and more than once. So the biggest challenge remains time. Why do the occupiers try to turn even the return of the bodies of the killed into some kind of provocation? And what do you think, given all this, will Russia and Ukraine be able to agree on another exchange of prisoners or fallen soldiers in the coming months? Write what you think about this in the comments under the TSN episode, and also subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so yet. Our broadcast continues, and we have a lot of important things ahead. A pink diamond from the Royal Treasury. In New York, a precious gemstone that belonged to Marie Antoinette's daughter will be sold at auction. Although there are no official records confirming the diamond's ownership, it was passed down as an inheritance by the Queen's descendants until, eventually, a member of a European royal family put the stone up for sale. At that point, the rare masterpiece appeared in public for the first time in a long while, before disappearing again for several decades. Now, before being sold, it has gone on a world tour. The diamond was exhibited in Los Angeles, Geneva, and Hong Kong. The auction is scheduled for tomorrow in New York. They expect to fetch between $3 and $5 million for the royal diamond. Well, that's where I'll wrap up this TSN broadcast. Write in the comments about the most valuable things to you, truly worth more than millions. What is as precious as diamonds and jewels? Old photographs, letters, childhood toys. I'm looking forward to seeing your different answers in the comments for this episode. And once again, I'd like to ask you to subscribe to the TSN channel on YouTube and hit the bell so you don't miss our exclusives. And finally, here are the brief highlights for Monday, June 16th. Six people died in Russian attacks in Donetsk region and 4 were wounded. In Bahadar, an enemy attack killed 3 local residents. In Pokrovsk, 2 were killed and 3 injured in shelling. An apartment building was damaged. 1 also died in Kostyantynivka. There, the private sector came under fire. Thousands of tons of harmful substances were released into the air over Kiev and its suburbs after Russian shelling in early June. According to the Ministry of Environmental Protection, the amount of sulfur oxide, nitrogen, carbon, and other compounds produced by fires caused by drone and missile attacks reached 1,900 tons. And if you convert this damage into hryvnias, according to the Ministry of Environmental Protection, the losses are at least 5,700,000 hryvnias. And today, another 1,245 bodies of the deceased were returned to Ukraine. During the latest repatriations, Russia handed over not only the bodies of Ukrainian soldiers, but also those of Russian soldiers. This was stated by the Minister of Internal Affairs, Igor Klimenko. He calls such actions deliberate. All of this is done to manipulate the information space and create more work for investigators. Israel and Iran continue to exchange strikes. In just 4 days, 24 people have been killed in Israel, and more than 300 have been wounded. Among the dead are 5 Ukrainians, 2 adults, and 3 children. Warm weather is returning to Ukraine, and there will be less rain. With the start of the new week, the weather will begin to stabilize, there will be less precipitation, it will shift toward the southeast, and temperatures will noticeably rise. In most regions, temperatures will be between 23 and 27 degrees, with only the east and northeast seeing 21 to 23 degrees. There won't be any summer heat above 30 degrees this week.